Welcome to the Apple Seed, where we bring you and your family great stories from great storytellers. On today's episode, we'll bring you a touch of trickery.
And he went over to that path right there, and he laid down on his face, and he looked dead.
And a whole heap of comeuppance.
His present, when he opened it up, was a full-size stuffed rat. Well, my daddy looked at that rat, and he laughed, and he said, "Joe, let me borrow that a little bit."
I'm your host, Sam Payne, and today we're bringing you stories of tricksters, those rogues who pull one over on the bigger powers that be. Virginia storyteller Sheila Arnold shares with us today one of the most famous tricksters in folklore, Brer Rabbit. In her story, it's called Brer Rabbit and the Turkeys, recorded live in the Appleseed studio. Here's Sheila.
This is another Uncle Remus story, but not necessarily Uncle Remus. Uncle Remus was a made-up person, and that's important to know. It was based on someone that Joel Chandler Harris, kind of a stereotype of people, of the enslaved people and of the stories, but was not a real person, although they've put realness around him in lots of different ways. But the Brer Rabbit stories, the Brer stories, were long before Joel Chandler Harris put them on paper. And am I glad that Joel Chandler Harris put them on paper? Absolutely. I am glad they have not been forgotten. And I think it's important to remember them. But these stories were around before them. Now, Brer means brother, B-R'-E-R. Brer means brother. Sis means what? Very good. Y'all are very smart. I like that. Now, the reason I say Brer, what it means now, is because I've had people that didn't know what Brer meant and that it was Brother Rabbit. And some people will actually say bruh. So I get to certain parts of the South and they say, you saying it wrong. It's not Brer, it's Bruh Rabbit. It almost sounds like Brer Rabbit when you write it down. Bruh Rabbit. So I just wanted to let you know a little bit of the history. And this is one of them stories. Brer Rabbit had been laying in that house for far too long. That is the problem with him. He had been laying in that house far too long. And Sis Rabbit was tired of him laying up in that house. And she said, you're going to get up. You're going to get up right now. You're going to get out that door. And you ain't going to come back inside this house until you bring back some dinner. And he could see by the look in her eyes. You know, you shared that look over there with him sometimes. And you could see, I can tell these two have been sharing that look sometimes. You could see by the look in her eyes that he knew he better get out. Knew he better get on out of that door. And so out the door he went. And he hopped around for a while, but he didn't want to do no work. Why would you have to work for some food? So he went back and he laid up under a tree again. Yes, he did. Just laid there up under a tree. And he watched what was happening, and there wasn't much. And finally he went to sleep, and he didn't wake up till he heard it. Ba-doom, 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 ba-doom. Ba-doom, 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 ba-doom. It was Brer Bear. Ba-doom, 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 ba-doom. He was coming up the walkway. Well, Brer Rabbit waited for a moment, and Brer Bear came around and said, Brer Bear, what you got there? What you got there? Oh, I'm so happy. I got me 3 turkeys. Got me 3 turkeys. Gonna take 3 turkeys home to my wife. We're gonna have turkey tonight. Gonna have turkey tonight. We're gonna have turkey tonight. We're gonna have turkey tonight. We're gonna have turkey tonight. I got 3 turkeys. I got to go. Can't talk to you now. Can't talk to you. Ba-doom, 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 ba-doom. Oh, and he was gone. Brer Rabbit had an idea. Well, Brer Rabbit knew the exact path Brer Bear was going to go. He never went on any other path. It was the same exact path. But Brer Rabbit knew that path so well. Brer Rabbit knew he could go through the woods, and that's exactly what he did. He could go through the woods. He could go down a whole nother path. He could go on that path and get right ahead of Brer Bear. So he went through that path and he went on down. He got right ahead of Brer Bear. He took off all his clothes. Don't you worry, you can look at him. He took off all his clothes. And he went over to that path right there and he laid down on his face and he looked dead. And he laid there, dead. And then he heard it. Ba-doom, 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 ba-doom.
Ba-doom, ba-doom, ba-doom. Ooh. 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 That's a rabbit. My sweetheart, she like rabbit. Ooh. I could have rabbit and turkey. Rabbit and turkey. But I already got turkey. I'm gonna have some turkey tonight. 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 And off Brer Bear went. Well, Brer Rabbit, he wasn't discouraged. He jumped back up, got all his clothes on, went back through the woods because he knew that path Brer Bear was walked all the way around that path, got all the way up in there in front of Brer Bear. And he took all his clothes off. Yeah, it's all right, you can look at him. And then he sat down right there in that path, and he stayed there, and he was dead. He was dead. Say it right. Dead. There you go. That's right. All right. He was pure dead. He was. He sat there and he waited. And Brer Bear, he had changed his tune a little bit. He was still singing, "Gonna have some turkey tonight. Gonna have some turkey tonight. Gonna have some turkey tonight. Gonna have some turkey tonight. There's a rabbit. There's a rabbit. My sweetheart, she like rabbit. She could have rabbit, and she could have turkey, and she could have rabbit, and she could have turkey. I saw one back there too, and she could have another rabbit. She could have turkey. Nope. I already got enough. I got enough. I'm gonna have some turkey tonight. 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 And he walked on. What do you think Brer Rabbit did? Jumped up, yes he did, put his clothes on, and went on that path because Brer Bear always stayed on the same path. And it ran up ahead, and then what did he do? See, y'all, very good. Lay down. I ain't gonna tell you the middle part no more, but there you go. And he lay down right there, and he laid down. He pretended like he was dead. Y'all are getting pretty good, but say it again. Dead. There you go. See? Got a little southern in y'all Utah folk. All right. And so he laid on down right there. And Brer Bear come up. Go have some turkey tonight. Go have some turkey tonight. Go. There's a rabbit. Saw a rabbit back there. Saw another rabbit back there. Got the turkey. My sweetheart, she like rabbit. Got this rabbit. Got that rabbit. Got the other rabbit. I'm gonna get me some rabbit. And so he went over to a tree. Brer Rabbit popped open one of them eyes. And he watched as Brer Bear took those leaves from under that tree, moved those leaves out the way, put those turkeys right underneath there, and covered them turkeys up. I done hit that real good. I'm gonna go get that rabbit. I'm gonna get the first one first and come back and get this one. And he started going, go have some rabbit and turkey tonight, 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 rabbit and turkey tonight. As soon as he couldn't hear his voice no more, Brer Rabbit jumped up, went over to that tree, moved all them leaves out, picked up them 3 turkeys, and he hopped his way on home, knocking on the door till Sis Rabbit said, I got some food for you, and went on in. Oh, and Brer Bear, he didn't find the first rabbit, didn't find the second rabbit, didn't find the third rabbit, didn't have no rabbit and turkey that night, and his wife told him to stay outside.
Sheila Arnold with Brer Rabbit and the Turkeys. You know, listening to this story takes me to a memory. I learned many of the Brer Rabbit stories from my childhood babysitter, Cheryl White. She lived next door, and she was kind and funny, and she would tell Brer Rabbit stories as she put my brother and me to bed. Cheryl's brother was Gordon White, and while we learned about trickster stories from Cheryl, Gordon was an actual trickster. When he knew his sister was babysitting us, he'd come over after we'd been put to bed and pound on our bedroom windows as though he were a werewolf or a zombie. We're probably still recovering from some of that trauma. When I got older, some of those trickster stories and some of those actual tricks must have still been there deep in my imagination. In high school, I tried on the role of trickster myself. Me and my pal Russ McKell took a couple of girls to dinner on a date around Halloween time. Pizza served up in a spooky old abandoned house in my hometown by candlelight. In the hours before the date, Russ and I rigged up a door in the old house to silently swing open in the middle of dinner. Spooky, right? We thought it would be a fun way to scare our dates. But we forgot we'd set it up. So when the door swung open in the middle of dinner, it took me and Russ by surprise and scared us both right out of our socks. Tricksters beware, right? Sometimes when you least expect it, it's easy for the trickster to become the tricked. Well, that's where Sheila's story took me. Where did the story take you? And who will you take along? There's a lot coming up, but before we get back to it, I just want to let you know about a special treat for you and your family from one of the other podcasts in the BYUradio family of podcasts. It's Constant Wonder, and just in time for Advent season, starting December 1st, Constant Wonder will be dropping a short daily episode with an inspiring Christmas theme. It might be a story from nature, art, or the Bible.
Because remember, in the story, the Magi were not Jewish. They were coming from the East, from different traditions. And yet they're being drawn together in this moment of worship. It kind of gives you that hope that maybe there would be this ability for us to cross all the things that divide us and worship and wonder together.
Each episode is only about 10 minutes long, making it easy to bring the Christmas spirit into your life throughout the holidays. Check out Constant Wonder starting December 1st on your favorite podcast platform or the BYUradio app. Find them on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube, all kinds of ways to get in on the Advent season with a daily episode from Constant Wonder starting December 1st. It's a pleasure to be with you today on the Appleseed, and it's time for our second trickster story. North Carolina storyteller Donald Davis had a whole family of tricksters growing up, but you'll have to decide for yourself who the biggest trickster is in this story. We recorded Donald telling the stuffed rat with our live audience in the Appleseed studio. Here's Donald.
Thank you. My father was born in 1901 on a farm, a homesteading farm, way back in Smoky Mountains in North Carolina. In a time period, no one had a car. They just had horses, and they were just farm horses. They never went to town. They didn't go anywhere. They raised all the food that they ate. They made all the clothing that they wore. And the other thing they had to make was their own entertainment and their own fun. And my little brother and I used to love to hear our daddy tell stories about the tricks that he and his brothers had played on other people through all those years when they were growing up. They were wonderful, wonderful tricks. But the very best thing was, when I was born, my daddy was still playing tricks. And we got to watch him invent and play tricks on people that we love to be part of. I'll tell you about some of those. Right up the road from us lived a lady named Mary Price. Mary and her husband had gotten married right out of high school. They had 2 kids, and then after their kids were old enough, to be in school, then Mary had gone to college. She'd gone to Western Carolina University, and she was majoring in business. My dad worked at the bank in town. And he told Mary when she was graduated from college, he would have a job waiting for her at the bank. Well, she graduated, and he brought her to work at the bank. The very first day she got there, she came in the door and he said, "Now, Mary, we're going to do a little bit of training this morning. But before we start doing training, could I ask you if you would do a favor for me?" Her first day on a new job, you think she agreed to do that? Of course she did. He said, "I loaned the bank's currency stretchers to Enos Boyd at the post office, and we need to get the currency stretchers back. Would you walk up to the post office and ask Enos if he'll send the currency stretchers back to the bank?" And she headed up the street toward where the post office was. As soon as she was out the front door, my dad picked up the telephone and called Enos Boyd at the post office. He said, "Enos, I've just given Mary Price a job, and she's coming up there to get the currency stretchers back." And there was a pause, and then Enos said, "Joe, what's that?" My daddy said, "I just made it up. Tell her you sent the currency stretchers down to Yule Taylor at the Buick dealers, and I'll call him before she gets there." And all morning, my daddy stayed one phone call ahead of her, sending her all over town from one place to another, trying to recover the mythical currency stretchers for the bank. When she got to L.N. Davis Insurance Company, Paul Davis said, "Oh, Mary, you're just 10 minutes too late. I just took them back over to the bank and gave them back to Joe again." And when Mary came walking in the door of the bank, there was all the staff lined up waiting. And when she came in the door, they all applauded. And they said, "You passed the Joe Davis test. Now you can work with the rest of us at the bank." He just came up with tricks, and he played tricks on people right and left. My Aunt Mary, my daddy's little sister, Aunt Mary got married to Uncle Gudger. He was in the Army, and when he went overseas, she came and stayed at our house, while he was gone, instead of staying way out on the farm by herself. She had just finished college and was in her first year teaching school. Now, she had no idea how hard teaching school was, especially the first year. And in the afternoon, she'd get home in the afternoon. She would be just totally worn out. She'd come in the door of our house, and she would flop down on the sofa in the living room and fall asleep. And we'd have to wake her up when it was time for supper after that. She was so tired. One day, my daddy got home, and Aunt Mary was asleep on the sofa. She had gotten home tired out from school, and she was just sound asleep. My dad got my brother and me together, and he said, "Boys, be real quiet and go put your pajamas on." And he got our mother and said, "Lucille, go put on your nightgown and put your robe on over it and roll your hair up a little bit and go in and start cooking breakfast." And her mother did that, and she started cooking breakfast, and Daddy went in the living room, and he shook Aunt Mary and said, "Mary, wake up, wake up. You've slept all the way through the night. We're having breakfast right now. It's time to go to school. You're going to be late. You won't even have time to change clothes. Come in here and get something to eat right quick so we won't all be late for school." And she came into the kitchen right quick, and we sat down, and we all had breakfast together. And she went out and got in her car and took off while the rest of us went back supposedly to get ready for school. And she got to school, and she couldn't figure it out. It was 7:30, and there weren't any other cars there. And then she noticed the sun was on the wrong side of the building. It was 7:30 at night, not in the morning. And the best thing was getting to tell about it later on. Well, he just pulled tricks right and left, right and left, right and left. Now, my mother did not appreciate my daddy's tricks. My mother had a slightly, would you say, subdued sense of humor. And laughter did not come easily for her or very joyfully. And every time my daddy would pull one of those tricks, she would just fold her arms and look at him, and she would say, "Joe, it's going to happen sooner or later. You better be prepared when you start something to live with how it turns out." And he would just laugh and he'd come up with another trick. Never slowed him down, no matter how many times she said that. Well, I was probably about 8 years old, and my little brother Joe was about 6 years old, and we were invited to Harris Prevost's birthday party. Now, everybody loved going to Harris Prevost's birthday party because of the way his mother ran the party. His mother would go out before the party came, and she would buy presents equal to the number of kids who were invited to Harris's party. And then all those presents would be wrapped, and they would have numbers on them. And then when we got to Harris's party, after we had had cupcakes and Kool-Aid and all that kind of stuff, it was time to open the presents. We would all draw numbers. And then Harris would open one of his presents, and whoever drew number 1 would get to open a present. It was their present. And then Harris would open the next one of his presents, and whoever opened number 2 opened the present, and we all went home with a present from Harris's birthday party. It was a wonderful party. Well, we went to that party that year, and we came home. My daddy picked us up, and on the way home, he wanted to know what we had gotten that year going to Harris's birthday party. I got this little made-in-Switzerland weather station. It looked like a little chalet house that would hang on the wall, and had a little man and woman, and sometimes the little man would come out, and sometimes the little woman would come out. It was suspended on a little piece of catgut, and the way the humidity changed, when it was going to be very humid, the little man would come out. When it was going to be very clear and sunny, the little woman would come out. And for years, that was on the wall in our kitchen. I don't know what finally happened to it. But my little brother, as far as he was concerned, he had won the grand prize. His present, when he opened it up, was a full-size stuffed rat. Now, what could be better for a 6-year-old boy than having a full-size stuffed rat? Well, my daddy looked at that rat, and he laughed, and he said, "Joe, let me borrow that a little bit." My daddy said, "What for?" My brother said, "What for?" And Daddy said, "Well, I don't know yet, but I'd like to borrow it for a few days, and don't say anything to your mother about it." Well, we got home, and we didn't say anything about anything at all, and a couple of days passed. It was very rainy. Now, even though my dad worked at the bank, he had grown up on a farm in the Depression. And so we always had a big garden, we always had chickens, and we always had a milk cow. Because no matter what, we were always going to be able to feed ourselves. And one night in that pouring rain, it had rained for about 2 or 3 days, my dad went out to milk, and when he came back, he said to our mother, he said, "Lucille, it has rained so much, it's brought the old wharf rats up out of the creek." There was one out there at the barn when I went to milk. I think there was one out there near the chicken house as I came back. I know you hate those things, so watch out, because as much as it's rained everywhere, the old rats could be just about anywhere. Just watch out for them. My mother hated those rats. Once in a while we would see them. Sometimes they would get up out of the creek into our garden. Well, we always, because we had a big garden, put up lots of food for the winter. We would can green beans, we would can beets, we would put up chicken, we would do all kinds of stuff. And we kept it, and we called it the basement. It was kind of like a hole under our house. The stairs went down from the back porch, rough stairs. It did have a poured, concrete floor down there, and it had walls, like concrete block walls, but they only came up as far as the dirt came. And there was a light there. There was not a light switch. You had to feel your way down in the dark and then hunt the string. And finally you found the string, you pull the string, and that was a frightening moment, because when that light came on, what was going to be down there with you, because you could see way back under the house around there also. The next afternoon, our mom needed to go down there and get some stuff to cook for supper. We kept our potatoes, in bushel baskets. We kept onions in bushel baskets. We kept apples in bushel baskets. All the canned stuff we put up, in the jars, it was all in there. And so she headed down to the basement, and as soon as she did, Daddy said, "Come here, boys, watch this." And he got that big old stuffed rat, and he reached down about the third step, and he put it on one of those basement steps and slid it out till its head was hanging right off the side, ready to meet her face to face as she came back up the stairs. And he said, "Let's back up and see what happens." Well, we could hear her down there figuring out what she was going to gather up and bring, and then all of a sudden we heard a footstep hit the bottom wooden step, and then we heard the awfulest scream you have ever heard in your life, and we heard a glass jar hit the wall and break, and something went ka-wham on the floor, and it was just dead silent. Her daddy said, "We might have overdone it." Let's go down there. And we headed down those steps, and she had slung a quart jar of green beans against the wall. It was broken. There were beans and glass all over the floor, and our mother was knocked out, cold like a roadkill frog right there on the floor. Now, this was before 911. What you did then was you just called the doctor, and the doctor would come. But my daddy was embarrassed to call the doctor when Mama knocked out in the basement. He said, "We've got to get her up in the kitchen, boys. We got to get her up in the kitchen and call the doctor. Come on, help me get hold of her." He got her under the shoulders like this, and she's just like that, all over the place. And he couldn't pick her all up. He said, "Boys, get her under one knee. Each one of you get under one knee. Let's get her up the steps." And we got her over to the stairs, and my little brother Joe's going, "Is she dead? Is she dead?" And he says, "Not yet. She's not dead yet. Come on." And we got to the stairs, and he would go up one stair and push, and we'd get her under the knees, and we went up a step at a time, and we finally got her all the way up in the kitchen, and my dad turned around to the telephone on the wall to call the doctor, and my mama stood up. She said, "Well, that sure was easier than having to walk back up the steps." You didn't think I was going to be scared by an old stuffed rat, did you? It was worth sacrificing a quart of beans just to get even with you. And my daddy turned to us and he said, "Boys, when you start something, you better be prepared to live with how it turns out."
Donald Davis with a story called The Stuffed Rat. Who's the trickster in your family? Every family seems to have at least one. Thanks again to Sheila Arnold and Donald Davis for their stories. We hope you'll pass along your own stories of tricks that were played and tricks that were foiled to the people you love. After all, sharing and listening to great stories can change your family's world.
The Appleseed is produced by Wendy Folsom,
Sam Payne,
and Brian Tanner.
Our audio engineers are Ashton Parkinson
and Carly Wilson.
The rest of the Appleseed team is Kelly Wermeister,
Trent Horton,
Evadane Hendricks, Miriam Arce,
and Tristan Schetzel.
A special thanks to the subscribers of our podcast who rate us or leave reviews.
You help people find the show.
We also love to receive emails at theappleseed@byu.edu.
Your thoughts and comments help us to shape the future of the Appleseed.
We're pleased and proud to be among the many podcasts produced by the BYU Radio family.
And you can find episodes of The Appleseed wherever podcasts are found, on the BYU Radio app or at byuradio.org/Appleseed.
I'm Sam Payne, and the whole team can't wait to be with you again on The Appleseed.